Table for One, Episode 17, Part 2 of our run-through of the 2016 People's Choice Top 100 Solo Games. Hey everybody, welcome back to Table for One. This is Episode 17. We are back here with Anthony and Jason, and once again, for Part 2 of our run-through of the People's Choice Top 100 Solo Games, we have Kevin.
Hi guys, thanks for having me again.
All right, so this week we're going to dive through from 50 to 1, plus some of those honorable mentions. So I will let Jason go ahead and take it away.
Okay, so for people who are tuning in, maybe they tuned into this episode first, they missed the last one. What we're doing is we are going through a list that Kevin organized on the One Player Guild. It is the Top 100 Solo Games 2016 edition. Not the Top 100 Solo Games of 2016, it's the 2016 edition. So it's basically what all solo games. Anthony will be nice enough to put this in the show notes so you can follow the link to the BGG list. This list will wound your wallet if you love solo games at all. The disclaimer is there for everybody to see. What we wanted to do is we wanted to have Kevin on and do a commentary episode, things that we noticed, surprises, what's going on with the list. So definitely check out the first part of the episode last time. A lot of good discussion. We're going to just keep the discussion rolling. We were just talking off air, actually, before we get into the top 50, just about how this list seems to work a little bit. So the previous 50 were more kind of either niche games or games that are people's personal favorites. So a lot of the war games kind of ended up clustering together a little bit. Some games that you haven't really heard a lot about or whatever. But these top 50 are really okay, this is what people are playing. This is what's in print for the most part, with a very notable exception, which we'll get to in a second. So that's what I kind of noticed about it, and I wanted to get Kevin's thoughts about that a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. I mean, if you can see by the scores of when you look at the listing that they start to get more and more spread apart as you go down the list. It takes a lot more people to vote for these games to get them into the top 50. So I think you're starting to see the games that it's not just 5 or 6 or 7 people who like it a lot. It's got to take 10 or 20, 30 people to get a game up here.
Okay, so we can definitely jump right in. So we're covering now page 3 of the list, which is games 50 to 26. Like I said, we're starting to get into that in-print cluster of games that a lot of people are playing, a lot of very popular, the games that I see constantly played on Facebook groups or wherever people are playing solo games. There is one game that I wanted to ask you about this, Navajo Wars. So I've never played this, but I've heard so much about it. I've heard that this is you have to locate this game. This is one of the really amazing solo experiences, but it's not in print. I think it's the only game on this list that's not in print, if you don't count Kingdom Death Monster, which is kind of its own funky printing schedule. I assume that you've played this, and are people right? Do I have to play this game?
Yes, I've played it. No, you don't have to play it. It's a sort of a war game, and it's not in print because of GMT's schedule, the way they do things. They seem to, determine what's popular, and then they go and print it 6 months from now. So they're very slow schedule. So it's coming back again. It's a very different kind of game. You have to kind of see it. I mean, the board's pretty. It's a card-driven kind of sort of war game. It's definitely the kind of game that some people will play it and like it, and other people will play it and go, I don't get it. I think it's the kind of game you've got to play 4 or 5 times to even have a clue what's going on. It's kind of like the coin games in that way, where you could play it once and hate it, play it twice and think, play it a third time and decide you love it. But it's not one of these games I would say this has got to be in everybody's collection.
Good to know. Anthony, did anything jump out at you on this cluster?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's probably just a side effect, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go along. But I noticed some of the ones that dropped the most all seem to have come out in the same year-ish or so. So games like Forbidden Island, Lewis and Clark, Star Realms, Freedom Underground Railroad, Pathfinder Adventure Card Game all kind of dropped a bit from last year's list, and they all kind of came out in that same 2013-ish window. And then you see a lot of games coming onto the list that came out, in this last year or so. So, we talked a little bit about the popularity of games kind of driving their placement on this list, especially in this range. I found that pretty interesting. And some of these games that did drop, I like a lot. And then some of the new ones I also like a lot. So it's not necessarily, the hotness versus not, but I do see that kind of running through here and with a lot of the games.
Yeah, I think when, if you look back to 2013, 14 was the first year we did it. So I think the selection for games was a lot lower. So a lot of these games are on there. And then as more and more games come out, I think people like these games, but then they find something else they like more. So maybe they put a list of 20. They only had 20 games. And so some of these games made that list. And then, as they played more and more games, others drop off. For me, like Friday's one, when I first made my list, it was on there 3 years ago. Now, I don't know if it'd be top 50 just because there's so many other games I prefer. And I think there is a hotness factor, too. I think you're going to get some that just are hot, so they come up the list, and then you'll see them drop back down next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And then you have other games too. Maybe they're not being made anymore. Warhammer Quest card game jumped out at me as one that had been rising in my list quickly and that is now dropping back down because I know they're not going to make any more stuff for it. So I'm not really playing it as much. So I guess that has an impact as well as how much content is coming out and what opportunities do people have to play the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another factor is you see expansions come out for a game, and it gets a bump in the list. As games show, as I revealed the games, 10 at a time, people look at them and go, well, why would this game go up? Nobody could explain it, or they're like, oh, well, this one went up because they just came out with an expansion. So now it's fresh in people's mind. They're playing it again. So it made their list higher than maybe it would, 3 months ago or something.
Mm-hmm. So, actually, speaking of expansions, this is something I was really curious about. So, and at the beginning of the list, and at the beginning in part 1, you talked about not really wanting to, have games that need AIs, or that have you're playing versus a computer or whatever it is. However, here I see Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition and Descent, which are both, I assume, on the list this high because they have apps. And because we've introduced that AI element. So if you could talk a little bit about, your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think I wasn't very clear on that. What I meant was more trying to think of a game that fits this, where that app is part of the game. It's sold with it. So that's we're all for that. I'm trying to think. Like Suburbia has a couple of solo modes to it, but if you get the app on your iPad, it's a completely different game. It's a series of challenges. So if someone says, "Well, I play it on my iPad, so I'm going to count it and put it in this list," that's not right because you are not playing Suburbia. Mansions of Madness, the app just controls what one other person would have done. It's still the same game. So I think that's where we want to really differentiate. Some people play Star Realms and play that against other people. That doesn't count. But if you play the Gambit and some of the other things and you play it solo, then we're all for that.
So what do you think about it? Do you play any of these app-based games? You were mentioning before, you've been playing for years and years. You've used the word grognard. I associate grognards with wanting to chase away anything new and exciting. So do you have any kind of perspective on the app stuff and how high they've debuted?
I think you're going to see more of it. I'm all for it. I mean, again, I want to play games, so I never even looked at Descent. And then when this app came out, I went and traded, I don't know, 3 or 4 games and got a whole pile of Descent stuff then because I love the dungeon crawl, but I was never going to play it otherwise. So yeah, I'm I love it. More of this that comes into games, the better.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I almost did the same thing with Descent because when that came out, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a game I've specifically avoided for this reason, and they fixed it. And the only thing that kept me from doing it was the announcement not too long after that Imperial Assault's getting the same style of app this year. And I already own stuff for that, so so I'm waiting. But First Martians, that Martian revamp of Robinson Crusoe, same idea. Like all these machine-handled scenarios that make it more functional and allow you to do more of the solo experience. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll buy. I mean, I have Robinson Crusoe and love it. And the moment that First Martians comes out, I'll buy it immediately.
Oh yeah, I'm with you.
Stay tuned for Table to One for a review of First Martians. The day it comes out.
Yeah, I have no games in my collection that's won against the rest of the players, none. And I wouldn't enjoy that at all because I know I would be the one always. So I'd never get to play the other side. So when Descent came out, that was fantastic. Otherwise, that was never happening.
Awesome. So is there anything else on that in this, I guess, 50 to 26 range that jumps out of you guys? A surprise or a game that you really want to highlight?
I mean, something I found interesting was Kingdom Death Monster. And not that it's on the list, which doesn't surprise me because I've heard a lot of good things, but that of the 22 votes, 16 were number one votes. So I guess the people who have this really, really like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, the reason it's not number one overall is, the price of some of the other stuff. And that I doubt that many people, I think the majority of the people who, pay that much for a game are playing it with friends and not playing it solo.
Yep. You're either in or you're out. It's like a club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A VIP club with a $720 cover charge. All right. So, I think we can get to the top 25. So the top 25, really, I think these games, and especially for last year and this year, I think these games really, this justifies the list a little bit because I really feel like these games are a good cross section. They represent exactly what people are playing, what people are interested in, what's in print and what people can actually get their hands on. And what struck me was, one of the things that struck me, there's a couple of things. I found that the list was relatively stable. There wasn't a ton of turnover, at least at this top end. It really came for me at the Gates of Loyang. The Uwe Rosenberg game is number 12. It was number 12 last year. It was number 12 the year before, which is pretty wow. So, I think the bottom of the list, there's a lot of churn, but I really did find that there was a fair bit of stability with some exceptions. So, Kevin, did you notice that or remark on it, or do you feel like there was a little bit more turnover than I'm giving it credit for?
No, I think you're right. I think you look at this list and some games switch positions. Other than a few that Scythe was showed debuted way up there. For the most part, you don't get a lot of games in this top 25 that fell off the list. You don't get a lot that went way down all of a sudden.
I'd say so. Like you mentioned the Scythe. So Scythe and Terraforming Mars were the two 2016 releases that came out. Have you played either of those games?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so Anthony has played Scythe. I think he's the only one on this call that has played Scythe. Oops, sorry guys, we're terrible solo gamers. Yeah, and it really did strike me that these were the only two. I figured that, with the hotness and everything happening, especially Manchester Madness, I'm surprised that Manchester Madness didn't crack this top 25.
I was a little bit too. And Scythe doesn't surprise me because this is a very good solo experience. It works really well. It's another Morten Monrad Pedersen Automa developed specifically for the game, separate. Like, it's custom enough that it feels like a different game, not like just a tweaked multiplayer version like a lot of Euros. So it really, really works quite well. I'm a little surprised it's this high because of just how big the game is and how expensive it is and how many people apparently bought it and also play it solo. I do, but didn't expect that many other people to. Terraforming Mars also just fantastic solo experience. I guess I was a little surprised Mansions of Madness didn't make its way up there, and maybe the Arkham Horror card game could have if it'd come out a little earlier in the year, but it kind of only gave itself a month or so there to get in people's hands.
I think you'll see that be way higher next year, like maybe top 10.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. At this point.
But we didn't mention Arkham Horror, the card game, and it was in the last grouping. I forget exactly where it was. Have you got a chance to play that, Kevin?
No, I've been a lifelong Lord of the Rings fan, so I decided I was going to buy everything for that LCG. So there's no way I'm buying a second LCG.
We had an episode. We actually compared Lord of the Rings to Arkham Horror. I think they definitely scratch different itches. Lord of the Rings is more involved mechanically. Arkham Horror is more driven narratively. Given that, do you foresee like jockeying between those two, or are they just going to kind of be hand in hand at the top?
I think you're going to see room for both of them. I think they're both going to go up. I don't know that. I don't know how high, because there's probably probably a lot of people like me who just are not going to buy both. It's hard to tell what will happen with it. I think they're both going to be good games. I don't know that Arkham Horror is going to suddenly kick Lord of the Rings off the list, and I think there's room for both. I just don't know if people have the money.
Yeah, we found out that it would cost you about $1,200 to get all of Lord of the Rings content, and that's just as of the early this year. There's more, and it's just going to keep on going from there.
Yeah, I'm hoping that once they get past the last box set, they'll just call it like the next one. I think it's the 6th, and they'll just stop it there.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Then I could catch up.
So I actually have 2 more games to ask about, and then I'll kind of ask Anthony what's up. So Kevin, I've noticed I'm on your page. Yes, I'm stalking you. You have 467 games rated. Only one game as a 10 for you. So tell me, is Mage Knight the greatest solo game / game of all time?
It is to me. It hits everything I want in a game. I mean, I have to, there's randomness. There's a fantasy theme, which I love. There's, you have exploration. There's a definite win-lose ending to the game. You have to defeat these 2 cities in the main scenario. I'll spend 15, 20 minutes on a single turn trying to figure out what I want to do next. And I love that kind of stuff. If it was longer, I'd probably rate it at 11. If you play 12 days instead of 6 or 3, it would be even better. I can't think of anything I don't like about it. People complain about the rules, but once you play it enough, the rules just flow and you just go and you play and you explore, and every game seems different.
It really feels like looking at the voting for this list that Mage Knight it's not even close. That, Lord of the Rings obviously made a little bit of a surge, but this laps the field basically. Do you foresee, I know we talked about Star Trek Frontiers a little bit. I personally think that Mage Knight's here to stay for the reason that you said. If you have Mage Knight, you love it, you're not going to kind of move sideways. Do you foresee Mage Knight just being the king of this list forever? And, would it take basically a meteorite of a game to knock this off?
I think eventually it will. I actually, I didn't even look at the totals. I did it. I put in the games, and I wrote a program that would just spit out the code that I could copy and paste into BGG each time. So I didn't even know if it was number 1 until we got to the last 10. And I wasn't 100% sure because I noticed that I had typed the name of some other games a lot. So I thought it was actually going to be closer this year, and it wasn't, probably just because of the sheer number of number 1s. But I could see somewhere down the road something else coming, that maybe something with more of a campaign, or maybe I don't know what it would take. I think it'd have to be a fantasy theme. One thing I'll tell you, I have a little secret to share, which is one of the things that got me to do this list was that when they did the People's Choice thing, and I think the first time they did it, Mage Knight was like number 82. And I was like, well, that's ridiculous. And I said, it's not better than that. And I said, you just don't have solo players voting on these lists. And so that was one of the main reasons is to do this list is I just had this feeling that it would be number one before we even did the first list. And so that was one of my motivations for doing this, is, kind of show people this is the best one.
It is certainly. I mean, you have this little star system up here. For people who want to look at the list, Mage Knight has so many more stars than any other game. It's a little bit scary.
Yeah, and this is the first year also that it got as many. It was on as many lists as other games. Like the first year, Friday had a lot more votes. It's just that Mage Knight had higher votes. This year, Mage Knight had more votes than anything else by a good margin.
So hopefully we could send this list to WizKids and they can get their component quality whipped into shape.
Amen.
So the other game I wanted to ask you about, WTF Arkham Horror, number 14. Oh my, what? I didn't think people were still playing this. I thought Eldritch Horror, between Eldritch Horror and Mansions of Madness, I feel like, and Arkham Horror, the card game, which the first time I saw this, I thought people were accidentally voting for this as opposed to Arkham Horror, the card game. But then I read the comments and I'm like, oh, it's my number one. It's my number two. It's my number one. What? Did this really kind of take you by surprise? I think you mentioned here that it was a little bit of surprise in the comments.
Yeah, it surprised me because for the same reason. I hear a lot of people talking about Eldritch Horror or Elder Sign even. But when people say that, you get a lot of people who immediately defend it. And I wonder if there's some kind of sentimental vote to this where they've loved it, they've played it, and it's like you don't want to say goodbye to your uncle or something. I don't know. Because Eldritch Horror is definitely a competitor, and I see a lot more people playing that.
I think it's more than a competitor. I think it's just, I mean, and it's above the list. I mean, it's not like people got it like wrong and put Eldritch Horror at 56. It's above Arkham, but the fact that it hasn't, like what happens in the Dice Tower list, like you get a game that is an iteration of a game, and then it pushes that former game way down the list. So then, Roll for the Galaxy comes up and Race for the Galaxy gets pushed down. Arkham Horror got pushed completely off of that list. For here, people are just holding on, man. I'm almost wondering if it kind of says something about solo gamers as a hive mind. Maybe that a solo gamer or maybe we're just a small community, or maybe that there is something in our mentality that we do get attached a little bit more. Because solo games, we've talked about this before on the podcast, you play them a lot more, so you get more attached to them. So maybe there's a little less of a willingness to let them go.
I think another factor is that if you find a game you like, you try to look for something similar, and you'll like that too. And I always look at Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert. I think they flip flop every year, and they're both pretty close, and they're pretty similar, but they seem to be, when I do these lists, and you can look at I don't give the names, but you can see what people voted on. And a lot of people who had one had the other also. And the same thing with Arkham and Eldritch. I think a lot of people have both of them.
Anthony, anything jump out at you? Surprises or disappointments or stuff that you mentioned, I think you own like a lot of these games, so, not too many surprises.
Not on the top 25. No, like when I started going through this, I was like, got it. Love it. There's a couple games on here that I either haven't played or just are hard to find. I hear people frequently reference or recommend Gears of War, and it's just not one I've seen. I don't think it's in print anymore. I don't know if the license is still around or what it is.
It's dead.
Yeah, so that's It's surprising it's still that high, but I know a lot of people really like it. So it's that's one I probably will never get a chance to play. Another one that I've gotten a lot of recommendations on is, and that I've played and just wasn't super enamored by, but I know it has kind of a long tail to it, is Shadowrun Crossfire. Interesting to see that in the top 10. I knew people liked it. I'd gotten a lot of recommendations. Didn't realize people liked it that much. So that was an interesting one that I have not played too much since it first came out.
That's one of those games that I'm really super surprised by. I know that, like Kevin mentioned, why did games rise? Because a lot of times because of expansions, that game does get expanded, but their expansions are more like character packs. And the scenario packs that they sell are not that different from the actual content because the scenarios are still using the same cars. They just kind of use them in a different way. Whatever. I don't get it. I got to be honest with you. It's fine.
That's a funny one because I don't post a lot to the solitaire games on your table because there's so much on there. But every now and then I'll just say, this game needs more love. And so I started posting about Shadowrun Crossfire because everybody said it was impossible. And so I watched the videos where the developers played it. You see the strategy. So I started posting that game on the list more. And I told people how, one day I played it on a Saturday or something. I played it like 23 times in a row. And, I'm getting to the point where I'm winning 1 out of 3 against the main quest. On the second extraction mission, I was winning that 80% of the time. And people started saying, what? I mean, you're kidding me. They thought it was broken and you couldn't win it. And then so more and more people started trying it. And then when they win the game, they started liking it. And so a lot of people on the one-player guild will tell you that it was like my crusade that got them to start playing it. And they actually started seeing how much there is in that game. That's a lot better if you just give it a chance.
I guess for me, I'm kind of a theme guy. Like I like, especially it was really so Shadowrun. For people who don't know about Shadowrun is actually an RPG, and this is the card game version of the RPG. And I'm an RPG guy at heart, maybe because I grew up with them. I've been playing them since high school, so I was looking forward to Shadowrun being this really thematic experience, and it's not. It's very abstract. So. I mean, I have one. I have won it. I gave it a couple chances. I did win it, but just the thematics of it, the different scenarios didn't really feel all that. The leveling system is like, here, have like a drip of XP, and oh, by the way, you need like a bucket full of XP, and I'm going to give you that bucket a drip at a time. And so there was a whole bunch of stuff that was like so much potential, then it just fell apart for me. I don't know. Maybe it's just my own expectation.
No, I mean, I agree with that. I like thematic games. This is one I like it for the challenge. And, I didn't even know anything about Shadowrun and didn't really care. And so for me, it worked great.
Yeah, that actually makes me want to play it more because I played it a couple times early. I didn't know anything about Shadowrun, and I never got it back to the table. But to hear that it's that challenging and you got to play through it a bunch of times to kind of figure out the path to success. I like those too. So
one game that I always see and I see recommended all the time is Onirim. Mm-hmm. I had it and played it, and I don't get it. I don't understand what people love about it. I never will. It's kind of, I don't know. I guess because you can play it on a airplane tray table or something makes it good. I don't know. That's one I just never understood.
I guess we could agree to disagree on that. You can have your Shadowrun Crossfire. I'll take my Onirim and walk the other way. So I think that about wraps it up. Unless you have there's any other closing thoughts, comments, anything you want to kind of just to kind of dovetail our conversation.
No, I mean I think what I said before the last episode, the solo games, it's just amazing what's coming out. They're getting better and better and better. You're seeing a lot more developers. I do a lot of buy a lot of Kickstarter games. I hate to admit, but a lot of them will come out, and the first thing that people start asking is it soloable? Is this? And they'll start either throwing it in, or they'll make sure that their game has a solo mode. And you're seeing it. It's really becoming something that's You don't hide in the closet and admit you play games by yourself anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we're out there broadcasting it to the world every week. So,
which we get a lot of crap for being the table for one with two.
That's true. Yeah. On the other podcast, they find that quite funny. I mean, the cool thing I like too is you're seeing even older games come out with expansions that make it solo, or like you said on Kickstarter, it's becoming kind of a this has solo, right? Because that's how I'm going to back it. I like that. I think it's cool, and it's turned some of my favorite games into games I play more often because I can play them at home. Like Russian Railroads is one that I like both multiplayer and solo at home. Yeah, it's cool to see, and I did not play board games, 5-10 years ago as much. 10 years ago, not at all. 5 years ago, not as much. So this seems like, looking at the dates on things, more recent, like that we're seeing this kind of surge of solo options, solo versions, solo modes officially in games versus like fan made. So I don't see it stopping anytime soon because apparently we have a voice and we're telling them what we want.
Right, and I think co-op games have had a lot to do with that. I think people bought co-op games to play with others, and then they found out that, over time they'd like, well, I don't have anybody here, but I'm going to play both sides and see what happens. And then they'd start playing that and realizing that it was actually fun, even though they might not have bought the game for the purpose of playing solo.
Mm-hmm. I think like a lot of alpha gamers got kicked out of their groups for being annoying, and it's like, oh, I can play this solo and alpha game myself all I want.
Solved it.
So that'll about wrap this up. Kevin, thank you so much. This has been so much fun to just sit and chat about random games and everything. Thank you so much for putting together the list. We definitely look forward to more content, moving forward.
You're welcome. This had a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, so that is going to wrap us up for episode 17. And once again, if you haven't yet, if you're just listening to this and pulling out a couple highlights, you can look at the full list of 100 games over on Board Game Geek. Again, the link is in the show notes and on the website. So check that out. Look at the list, see if it matches yours, see which ones you've never heard of, because every year I look at this list and I'm like, oh, there's plenty of games you haven't heard of. So it's always fun to kind of, if you're looking for a shopping list. If you're not, maybe drip feed it to yourself. But yeah, definitely check that out. In the meantime, if you are listening to this episode, make sure you stop by iTunes if you have a couple free minutes, or the Google Play Store. Leave us a quick review and a 5-star rating would be awesome. Help more people find the podcast, and we always love to hear what you think as well. You can also leave a comment on BoardGamersAnonymous.com. Post all the episodes there, along with all the episodes of Board Gamers Anonymous. We are on Board Game Geek and Guild 1735. And on Twitter and Facebook, I post there every day. So you can find all sorts of cool stuff there. But until next week, that is everything for Table for One. This has been Anthony and Jason and Kevin, of course. Thank you so much for coming on once more. And until next time, we will save you a seat at this Table for One.
Later, everybody.